Pastor Roy Gerhardt from Galloway United Methodist Church in Franklin, Pennsylvania, sharing a few words of encouragement to help us follow after Jesus. Are you moving forward in faith? This is always a challenge, to be able to keep moving forward in faith, to grow deeper, more mature, more rock solid in faith. And the more rock solid you are in faith, I want to tell you, one of the key things to that is the more contented you are, the more at peace you are, the more at rest in the plans of God. And so that when you're moving forward, you and I have got to keep moving with God, focus forward on what God is doing. This is an important lesson, both for us as believers who are, looking back at our past and thinking that the good old days, that the better days of our life are behind us. And this can really unhinge us, whether you're looking back at the days of your sinfulness or even looking back at your spiritual growth and development, saying, well, the spiritual things were all better back then. Now everything stinks. And in either case, you're not going to move forward with God. Listen, the people of Israel struggled with this. We saw them struggle from the beginning with a constant looking over their shoulder, looking back to Egypt. They left Egypt and Pharaoh pursued. They were up against the Red Sea and they began to have an outcry and say, there's no way forward. We would have been better off if we'd stayed in Egypt rather than come out here to die. They couldn't see that God was leading them forward and would not fail. But God did not fail, and he led them through the sea, and he brought them out the other side. But even then, when supplies ran short, they began that same outcry. We should just go back to Egypt. At least we had food in Egypt. This is terrible that God brought us out here to starve to death. And even when they got all the way to the promised land, God said, send some spies in, take a look around, see what I've been talking about. And so they did all of that. But then the same outcry arises. This same terrible mantra of let's go back to Egypt is once again on their lips. They start to say, this is not possible. We can't go in. The land is too difficult for us to take. We'll simply be destroyed. God brought us out here for nothing. And they start to say, we should actually get a new leader who would take us back to Egypt. It's as though they are saying, we would rather go back to Egypt than go anywhere following after God. Now, it sounds pretty radical when you say it like that. I'm sure they just thought they were making a few adjustments to the plan, but it's absolutely clear. You can't go back to Egypt and continue to follow God. And they've decided they would rather go back to Egypt than follow God anywhere. Makes it clear why God's reaction would be so severe as well. That if they are going to have this kind of a no-go attitude, God says, then you will not go. You will not go in and you will not go back. You're just going to wander around out here until you die, and then I'll take the next generation and move forward. I've seen that impact people in so many ways in their lives. I've seen it happen in a church where we get so caught on the past that all we want to do is preserve the past. And I'm not talking about keeping our doctrine solid. Absolutely. We're going to keep our doctrine solid on the truth of God's word. We're not going to just flex and change with culture, but what we do, how we do it, buildings, programs, those things have to change. And I've seen us get stuck and say we've never done it that way before, or we've always done it this way, and we get stuck in a place where we don't move forward. It's as if we're saying that back when, in the good old days, that's when everything was spiritually great. That's when God was great. And we can't see where God can move us forward in a way that leads further on in his grace and his goodness, and we will balk and stop and hold fast in our tracks. And sometimes that happens until a church simply dies out. There are many others who keep looking back to the good old days of their sin. I know a man who was a worship leader, active in his church, seemed like an incredibly godly man who turned around and left his family, became a hard-drinking partier. After the fact, many of his Christian friends discovered that while he was trying to move forward in faith, Every time he was around other people, not so much around his Christian friends, but around other people, he was always talking about the good old days, back in high school when he was drinking and partying and having a great time. And eventually, that took over his soul. We can end up in either case in a place where we're saying, I'm not going forward anywhere with God. I want to stay back where I was. I want to go back and get to the good old days. Well, let me tell you, with God, the good old days are always up ahead. The best is yet to come through his grace and power. Trust him and move forward in faith. May God bless you today, and as you share this good news, may God make you a blessing wherever he takes you.